Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're looking at something truly incredible. If you've spent any time in or around India, you already know the name Tata. I mean, it is absolutely everywhere, right? From the steel in the buildings to the cars on the road, the software running massive global businesses, and even the tea in your cup. But how exactly did a family that started out selling opium transform into India's most trusted $365 billion conglomerate? Today, we're going to explore how this colossal empire actually survived global conflicts, devastating market crashes, and some serious near-collapse moments to become the enduring powerhouse it is today. And more importantly, what their survival tactics can teach us about building a truly resilient legacy. Okay, let's dive right into this sprawling 155-year saga. We'll be covering 1. From opium to early capital. 2. The shift to manufacturing. 3. Wars, aviation, and nationalization. 4. The Ratan Tata era. And 5. Crises, comebacks, and legacy.
So, let's kick things off with Section 1, From Opium to Early Capital. The origins of the Tata family actually trace back to Persia, modern-day Iran, before they eventually migrated to Gujarat in India. For 25 generations, they lived in the town of Navsari, working purely as Parsi priests. But then, Jamsetji Tata decided to completely break this centuries-old tradition, leaving the priesthood to become a businessman in Bombay. And what's truly fascinating here is how this family actually built its foundational wealth. At the time, Britain had a massive demand for Chinese tea, but they just didn't have enough silver to pay for it. So, they created the system of exporting Indian opium to China to balance the trade. It was highly controversial, obviously, and even led to the Opium Wars, but virtually all the major trading families in Bombay were part of this system. Jamsetji, along with his brother-in-law, set up shop in Hong Kong to get in on this incredibly lucrative trade. From there, they expanded. And when the American Civil War broke out in 1861, American cotton supplies to British textile mills just completely halted. The Tatas capitalized on this massive global disruption, selling Indian cotton at double the normal market rate, bringing a staggering amount of wealth into the firm.
But you know how these booms go. They bust. When the American Civil War ended, U.S. cotton flooded the market again, and the Tatas' cotton trading crashed spectacularly. They faced such heavy losses that investors were demanding their money back immediately. The situation got so dire that Jamsetji's son, Jamsetji Tata, was literally forced to sell his own home in Bombay just to pay off the debts. But this failure, it was actually a profound catalyst for them. The big takeaway for Jamsetji was that mere trading is way too vulnerable to the whims of global events. True, lasting power comes from controlling the manufacturing yourself. Moving right along to Section 2, the shift to manufacturing. So this realization marks their official shift to manufacturing. Jamsetji decides to build a massive textile empire right in India, utilizing Western industrial practices he'd observed while spending time in England. He set up his first major operation, the Empress Mill, in Nagpur in 1877. He picked Nagpur because it had cotton, coal, water, and a really solid railway network. But he ran into a huge problem right out of the gate. The local workforce had a very laid-back work culture and would just take time off for the smallest reasons. And this brilliantly illustrates Jamsetji's absolute genius. Instead of using harsh discipline, he introduced revolutionary employee benefits. Keep in mind, this was the 1870s, literally decades before modern HR even existed. He implemented a provident fund, workplace health insurance, and organized family days and sports days where top-performing workers were rewarded with gold chains, watches, and cash. It completely transformed the work culture and made the mill a massive runaway success. But Jamsetji wasn't satisfied with just textiles. He wanted to build India's very own steel industry. To pull this off, he knew he needed to find a location that had 3 essential ingredients in close proximity: coal, iron ore, and water. It became an absolute obsession for him. He traveled across India for 17 grueling years gathering geological samples. Tragically, Jamsetji passed away just before his dream was realized. It was actually his son, Dorabji, who finally found the perfect spot, with 60% iron ore in the ground and 2 rivers right nearby, leading to the birth of Tata Steel in 1907. All right, Section 3, Wars, Aviation, and Nationalization. Moving into the 20th century, under the leadership of Dorabji and later JRD Tata, the company would face extreme global demands and intense domestic political friction that would seriously test their survival. When World War I broke out, the British desperately needed steel for tanks and railways, and Tata Steel stepped up as a massive supplier. It was a huge boom for them, but just like the Civil War cotton boom, it was followed by a devastating bust. Following the war and an earthquake in Japan, who was their biggest client at the time, demand just plummeted. It got so bad that Tata couldn't even pay their workers, and banks were refusing to extend their loans. To save the company from shutting down completely, Dorabji Tata literally pledged his wife's personal jewelry just to raise funds.
It was this massive phoenix arc of rising from the ashes, keeping the company alive by the absolute skin of its teeth. So the crucial point here is, despite these near-death experiences, they just kept innovating. Post-independence, they partnered with Daimler-Benz to manufacture commercial vehicles under a new company called Telco, which we now know as Tata Motors. The demand was so explosive and the engineering was so solid that very quickly Tata captured a staggering 70% of the entire Indian heavy truck market. However, that level of success bred some serious political friction. Following India's independence, the government sought tighter control over major industries. In 1953, the government completely nationalized Air India, the beloved airline originally founded by J.R.D. Tata. 3 years later, in 1956, they nationalized Tata's New India Assurance. And by 1969, the government passed the MRTP Act, a law specifically designed to prevent monopolies, which severely restricted the autonomy of large conglomerates. J.R.D. Tata clashed repeatedly with political leaders like Morarji Desai, who actually ended up removing J.R.D. from the leadership of the very airline he had created. It was a really tough era of heavy regulation that severely handcuffed the group's ability to grow.
Which brings us to Section 4, the Ratan Tata Era. As the company limped its way into the 1990s, the world was changing rapidly, and Tata needed to transform if it was going to survive this new globalized economy. A massive question hung over the boardroom: who on earth would succeed the legendary J.R.D. Tata? Well, J.R.D. had no children of his own. Ultimately, he bypassed several established executives and chose naval Tata's son, Ratan. At the time, Ratan was seen by some as inexperienced, and this choice set off a fierce internal power struggle. See, the individual companies within the Tata Group were essentially being run as personal fiefdoms by powerful regional bosses, known as satraps.
So Ratan Tata had to carefully, systematically wrestle control back from these satraps to centralize power back under Tata Sons. Once he secured that control, he made some incredible strategic pivots. Perhaps the most important one was with Tata Consultancy Services, or TCS. He saw that they were mostly just doing low-value data entry and bookkeeping. He completely shifted their focus toward high-value, customized enterprise software solutions for global corporations. This move was a total masterstroke, leading to a massive IPO in 2004 that flooded the Tata Group with incredible capital to expand globally. And now for our final chapter, Section 5, Crises, Comebacks, and Legacy.
The 2000s were really defined by massive risks, political clashes, and an aggressive push onto the global stage. And there's a fascinating contrast in this era. Ratan Tata championed the Tata Nano, intending it to be a one-lakh rupee car to make safe travel affordable for the Indian middle class. But it failed miserably in the market. Why? Because they completely misunderstood consumer psychology. In India, a car is a status symbol, and marketing it as the world's cheapest car basically made buyers embarrassed to own it. Yet, at the exact same time, Tata pulled off its most lucrative triumph, acquiring the luxury brands Jaguar and Land Rover from Ford for $2.3 billion. While critics thought it was a huge mistake, Tata just let JLR's management operate freely, leading to a massive turnaround that made JLR the biggest driver of Tata Motors' profits. The cheapest car failed, while the luxury cars absolutely soared. They also had to navigate some incredible external shocks. In 2007, Tata Steel acquired the British steelmaker Corus for $12 billion, taking on massive debt right before the 2008 global financial crisis crushed steel demand. It was a heavy financial burden for years. But 2008 also brought profound tragedy when terrorists attacked the Taj Mahal Palace Hotel in Mumbai, a property built by Jamsetji Tata himself. During this horrific crisis, the true ethos of the company really showed. Ratan Tata personally met with the families of the victims, and the company financially supported the family of every single staff member and vendor affected. This compassionate response cemented deep loyalty and respect across the entire nation. Following Ratan Tata's retirement, the group faced a tumultuous period. Cyrus Mistry took over as chairman, but his push to reverse several of Ratan Tata's legacy projects led to a bitter falling out. In 2016, Mistry was abruptly ousted by the board, sparking a massive 5-year legal battle that gripped India's corporate world, ultimately ending with the court siding with Tata. Out of this chaos rose N. Chandrasekaran, a former TCS intern from a farming family, who became the first ever non-family chairman to lead the group. And Chandrasekaran didn't just stabilize the ship. He brought the whole story full circle. In 2022, under his leadership, the Tata Group bought back Air India from the government in a massive 18,000 crore deal. That's roughly $2.2 billion. As a lot of people have noted, the 1953 loss of Air India was effectively avenged 69 years later. It closed a massive historical loop for the company, bringing JRD Tata's beloved airline right back home.
So we end with this provocative thought. From its controversial origins in the opium trade to a modern $355 billion global juggernaut, running airlines, software companies, and steel mills, how does a 155-year-old empire, forged in colonialism, global wars, and immense crises, continue to reinvent itself for the future? Well, the history of Tata proves that survival isn't just about avoiding failure. It's about having the incredible resilience to rebuild every single time the world turns upside down. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer, and I hope this deep dive into the source material gives you a totally new perspective on the Tata Empire.